Excuse me, sir. I like your long hair and your, let's just say, flowing robes. What brings you to this part of our here colony?
Perfect. Do you have a curse technique? I don't remember if I awakened you or not.
What is a curse to...
Oh, you're one of the fodder. Come here. What's up, guys? All Pencil here, and here we are to talk about, the fact that Kenjaku has not been mentioned. Well, actually, he's been mentioned in the most recent chapter. He's been mentioned in 234. But Kenjaku has not made an on-panel appearance for a whole volume. An entire volume. Remember, he is gone. And he has been gone. And I feel like very few people are talking about that. Myself included. So, allow me to hop in and speculate on what's going on with the biggest brain boy this side of the Mississippi, and why I am extremely worried for our main cast, and extremely worried for both Gojo and Sukuna, because I don't think either of them are safe at all. So, remember, what's up, guys? I got the pencil here, and ooh, I actually grabbed it by the palm and lifted it. I was going to do that. I have it on me. I keep it on me at all times. And fun fact, Kenjaku also likely has something like this on him and keeps it on him at all times. It may be smaller, it may be more around like this size, so a little bit more portable. But the reason I bring this up is because remember what Kenjaku said he was going to do. He said, okay, well, they're all watching you fight Gojo. I'm going to go and just get rid of the rest of the culling game players. The rest of them. Now, notably, we don't know about how many players were even in the culling games and or how many players are even left. Because remember, numbers were already starting to dwindle by around the time of Gojo's release, if not a little bit before that. And sure, the U.S., let's just say the military showed up, but I'm assuming their numbers dwindled too over the course of the time that they were spending in the mystical magical land of Jujutsu. Thusly, we're in a pretty weird situation where Kenny executing the rest of the players could mean one of two things. Either one, like 5 characters get packed. Whatever. Or it could mean that Kenny is out here slaughtering hundreds, if not thousands, of people. Because you gotta remember, we never actually got a conclusion to the military plotline. That just popped in and despawned. Literally within like the course of 5 chapters. For a big twist, it didn't really do much yet. But remember, Kenny's going around and slurping up cursed energy to get ready for the big old juicy merger. So one thing Kenny's doing is going up and cleaning the colonies. But the reason I said that Kenny may have this on him, and he probably keeps it on him at all times, is not just because Kenny's just like me, for real. It's also because Kenny is, how do I put this? He's a little bit devious. Just a teeny tiny bit devious, if I do have to say so myself. And, with that being the case, what is the one rule about slaying a sorcerer? You want to do it with Jujutsu. Why do you want to do it with Jujutsu? Well, who was that guy? Who was that guy that came back after he didn't perish to Maki, or the Soul Split Katana, but to Maki's mama, with a not katana? Oh yeah, Naoya. And remember how Naoya came back as a super insane, next level amped, vengeful spirit? If you didn't, he did. Go reread Sakurajima Colony. I know a lot of people don't like it, but it's still good. Go reread it. And remember, Kenny, if anybody knows about that property, and Kenny, if anybody, would be able to take the most advantage of that property. Now, admittedly, there are not many characters left that we very specifically know of, in terms of, oh, we know their abilities, we know where they are, we know that they could get cooked, and we know Kenny could turn them into a vengeful cursed spirit by beating them down, bullying them with his special grade level prowess, and then just whoop, whoop, and then just getting rid of them with just regular stuff. Hey, he may even pick up one of the military's weapons and just spray. Get them up out of here without conventional means, or conventional sorcery means, and turn them into vengeful spirits. But we do have some, like, outliers that are pretty dangerous that are just lingering around. For the lowest one on that tier list, I hate to do it to him. I love this guy for no reason, really. Azanoki. Remember the guy who could already create massive explosions while in human form and was spamming RCT on the consistent? Yeah, he's still alive. We never actually got a confirmation of him going. Remember, he just left Takaba alone. He gave Takaba all his points, but he still exists. And presumably he just got more points to avoid, the, how do we put this? The curse technique being removed from his head, and bada bing, bada boom, he's dropped. You know who else is still alive? I think we should have put this guy on the bottom, but teach their own. Charles. Charles is still alive. You know what Charles can do? He can see the future of anyone he pokes. Now, admittedly, I'm not sure. I forget if it's just with the battle staff or if it's with anything. But notably, Charles is not here. You can go check. In all the Gojo vs. Sukuna fight, unlike characters like Kashimo, who showed up and said, shoot, I'm gonna linger around, or characters like Higuruma, a character who I wasn't even expecting to see because he just wandered off on his own. I didn't think we were going to see him. Characters like Higuruma and Kashimo are there, but Charles isn't. And sure, human Charles is fodder. Like, unlike Higuruma, he doesn't even have an equivalent to grade 1 statement. He's just a random who got perception blitz when he could see 2 seconds into the future. He's not that impressive, but give him the vengeful curse spirit amp, he may go a little bit crazy. The ability to see the future is a little bit wild. And remember, Kenny doesn't actually need to use the cursed spirits in order to get the use out of the cursed spirits. All he needs to do is throw a little Uzumaki here or there, and now his technique is gone. And now it's just part of Kenjaku. So sure, maybe Charles' technique isn't that useful, even if he's reincarnated as a vengeful cursed spirit, but his technique could be very useful if it's used by Kenjaku, an extremely fast, extremely strong character who may have to deal with a character or two who is faster than him. Only issue with that is it's a one-time use, so he would have to use it wisely. But then, next up on the list, in terms of important characters who are not with our current cast and are fully liable to get got, I wish I could say Ryu, but it's not Ryu. It's actually the person that was fighting against Yuta alongside and against Ryu. Yeah, Earl's not here. Anyone else find that strange? I found it strange that admittedly Yuta just left them in Sendai. I found that a little bit weird, that Sukuna could just Chad walk up, get rid of Ryu like that, and they didn't go anywhere. But we do know that Earl is still chilling like a villain. And we also know that her technique, sure, it's not the best technique. Dare I say, even with it having a domain, even with it likely having some sort of maximum, considering Earl's level of prowess within the Jujutsu world in the Heian era, it's not like a top 5 technique, but I'd pretty confidently say it's a top 10. Sky manipulation is cracked with just regular Earl. Regular Yuta. Regular people using sky manipulation is already crazy. Now imagine you took Earl, someone who was already comparable to a special grade tier sorcerer in Yuta Okotsu, and completely outclassing a special grade tier sorcerer in Yuta Okotsu in base. I'm talking about Yuta being in base. You tell me what's going to happen if she gets turned into a vengeful cursed spirit and Kenjaku slurps her right on up. I think it could get tragic. Maybe just slightly a bit of a new panic. You know, that sky manipulation could be automatic. And I could see her being one that doesn't actually just turn into Uzumaki fodder, one that actually gets used. But there's one left. One vengeful cursed spirit left. Because as far as I can tell, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I've just missed him. Maybe he's been just slightly off panel every single time. But he's been oddly quiet if he is there. There's one more major Culling Games player that we know of that could, let's just say, cause havoc if Kenny managed to cook with him. Takaba is nowhere to be found. Nowhere at all. He's just completely gone. No idea where that man is. For no reason, too. Like, there's everyone else is here. Like, characters, once again, characters I did not expect to be here are here. Higuruma's here. Kusakabe's here. Momo's here. Miwa's here. Everyone's here. Except for Takaba? What could Takaba possibly be doing? Oh! Maybe they just let him wander out. Maybe he just wandered out, but he's still a member of the Culling Games, meaning Kenny has to get rid of him. Remember, some characters that we have not seen. But then again, I think we've seen like Toto. If Toto is still out and about, he's not in the culling games. Kenny can leave Toto alone for all he cares. But someone like Takaba is a registered member of the culling games. He has 0 points, but he's a registered member. So Kenny has to come across him. Now, the real question is, could Kenny figure out Takaba's technique and realize that he would like that? Because if he does, and he gets rid of Takaba, and I know you're probably wondering, how's he going to get rid of Takaba? He has the most broken technique in the series that can combat even the Limitless plus the 6 eyes in Satoru Gojo. There's no way he could be Domain. Kenny has Domain. That's the big thing. If Kenny didn't have Domain, then Takaba would be fine, but Kenny has one of the most broken domains of the entire series. Easily a top 3 domain. If not a top 2, because Barrierless, but, you know, Unlimited Void is crazy. So, with that being the case, Takaba whipped up in the kitchen. And remember, Takaba already, in base, just as a regular human dude, is pretty much pseudo-immortal. Like, nigh and impossible to get rid of. Like, remember, he simply cannot perish because he doesn't think the red is funny. And lastly, he would just find everything around him hilarious and unable to execute him. Lastly, when he gets executed by Domain and rezzed by a vengeful cursed spirit, or as a vengeful cursed spirit, he could go crazy. But the question is, would he really be vengeful? That's the one weird thing. But if he's vengeful or not, if he gets rezzed as a cursed spirit, since he is now a sorcerer, bada bing, bada boom, he's now part of Kenny's arsenal. And once again, if Kenny figures out Takaba's technique, which is pretty hard to say he would, he could take it for himself. And that could be how he beats Satoru Gojo. But those are like 4 that we know of definitively. Future Sight, detonating body parts, sky manipulation, and the comedian. Those are simply 4 techniques that Kenny could have. Simply, he just could have gotten the DLC. That's entirely possible. But realize, in a similar vein to how we do not know the full depths of Yuta's kit, we don't know the full depths of what Kenny already has in terms of cursed spirits, since he can now mostly use them except for against Yuta. Yuta's still super duper annoying for Kenny to fight because perish and bada bing bada boom, all Kenny's cursed spirits perish. But remember, Gege has essentially left the door open to let Kenny have whatever cursed spirit, vengeful or not, whatever technique, crazy stolen or not, like legitimately, Kenny next to Yuta has one of the deepest potential bags in the entire series that he is cooking up right now, off screen. Sure, will he likely end up having to fight every last member of Jujutsu High? Absolutely. Indubitably. Does that really matter? When he has an army of armies by armies? Like, I think in the data book it said he has like over 1 million curses. I think. I forget. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. I haven't read that data book scan in a while. But he has a bunch. If Geto had 4,000, even 4,000 is a lot to deal with, especially for the fodder of our group. So, Kenny's cooking on the cursed spirit front. But also realize, Kenny, and this is confirmed in chapter 234, is considered a whole Jujutsu high level threat on his own. He's already considered above everyone individually. Everyone believes that in order to jump Kenny properly, they need to jump him with everyone. So that means that Kenny's up there. Hypothetically, if the 2 current mightiest in the verse were having an extremely deadly battle to decide the fate of creation, and they both wore each other down so much to the point that their domains were disabled, and they were so low on cursed energy or so broken on everything they were doing, or hypothetically were missing an arm, then they wouldn't be able to defend themselves against Kenjaku's domain. You know, the barrierless domain that was more than powerful enough to take down another special grade and 1 singular sure hit. Sure, it would be hard. He would be fighting the literal 2 strongest in the verse, but it wouldn't be insane or impossible to decree that Kenny, if he were to show up and drop domain on a extremely fatigued and omega fatigued Gojo and Sukuna, who could not counter with a domain of their own, with a simple domain, with a hollow wicker basket, none of that. Due to Gojo missing an arm, though admittedly he's regrowing at the end of 234, so it's a little bit iffy on that. Or Sukuna, who's simply out of cursed energy. He thinks that if he gets hit by a purple, he's cooked after he's able to eat a purple that was amped to 200%, relatively fine. I say relatively fine. He lost both of his arms, according to him. But still, I think it's entirely possible that Kenny could come out cooking and take out the both of them. Because we got to remember, right? These two are the only things in Kenny's real way. Like, yes, don't get me wrong. I think Yuta could give Kenny a really, really, really solid fight. On his own, by the way. Like, 100% on his own. I think Yuta could give Kenny a solid run for his money. Hikari, not so much. Hikari doesn't have any immediate counter to Curse Spirit Manipulation, but Hikari and Yuta, whew, that's a pretty dangerous wombo combo right there. You throw Maki in the mix, Soul Split Katana, ooh, it could get crazy. Oh, wait, we still got more? Throw in Liberated Yuji, who may have a whole new technique. Oh, we're starting to... And then throw... I mean, the fodder doesn't really matter. But hey, Mei's Blackbird technique, you know, people haven't survived that bad boy. So there are options for Kenny to take on, or things that he will have to deal with. But remember, the two things that are definitively in his way are Gojo and Sukuna. Gojo simply because he obviously wants Kenny out of Geto's body, and Sukuna simply for the fact that I don't think Sukuna would probably like to be absorbed into a giant cursed conglomerate. He probably wouldn't. I'm not even sure Sukuna knows about that part of the plan. Does he? Can he explain? No, he only explained it to Choso. So it's not even like you can say, oh, Kenny explained it to Yuji, and Sukuna was on the phone like, oh, really? Really? That's what you're planning to do? Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, I don't think Sukuna even knows what Kenny's real plan is. And I highly doubt Sukuna would tell or get told by Kenny, because Kenny knows that Sukuna probably wouldn't want that. And remember what Kenny's goal is, at least his stated goal. Once again, Kenny's very, very mischievous. I'm not entirely sure if I could trust what he says, but remember, his endgame is to make that giant curse conglomerate. What would be more useful in terms of reserves, quality, and type of cursed energy than the type of cursed energy contained in the two strongest characters in the verse? Hypothetically, just hypothetically, if Kenny is able to set it up to the point where he can make the merger happen. The thing is, though, the hard thing about this is that just getting rid of Gojo or Sukuna, or both, does not automatically meet the merger condition. That's the big issue. Because the merger condition, I do believe, is the culling games stopping. He needs to stop the culling games first. In order for him to do that, he needs to get rid of not just Sukuna, who's a member of the culling games, or, well, no, the culling games will end when it's just him and Sukuna. But Sukuna, once again, would likely just get in the way of his plans because Sukuna wouldn't cooperate. Then the ones he has to get rid of, and they're currently untouched and fresh right now, are characters like Kashimo, characters like Hikari, characters like Sukuna, characters like Yuta, characters like Itadori. All these characters are still valid, in the sense that Kenjaku, as far as we know, unless he adds a new rule to the culling game, as far as we know, Kenny needs to get rid of them too. But remember what I mentioned at the start of the video. We know that if you were to simply hypothetically speaking, if you were to, say, execute a sorcerer with non-conventional means, then you could maybe get a vengeful cursed spirit out of that. And considering Kenjaku is such a high-level cursed spirit manipulation user, that he's able to take Tengen, one that evolved into a cursed spirit human hybrid, and simply put it under his control just like that, simply on contact, according to Tengen himself. What do you think would happen if Gojo ends up getting turned into a vengeful cursed spirit? The only reason I'm not too down with that is because he'd literally be unbeatable. He would just straight up be unbeatable. Like, there would be no way to stop. I mean, you could argue RCT, but we know, I mean, then again, the round deer and Ahito are weird. I'm not exactly sure how RCT works out with them. But if Gojo gets a vengeful cursed spirit amp, he wipes. He would have to be completely subservient to Kenny. That's the only way. And even then, I'm not sure Kenny could beat that Gojo in order to make him a cursed spirit under his control. Unlike I'm confident in him beating the other people that he could beat. But Gojo's not necessarily the main point here. I wanted to mention him so people didn't say, I didn't mention him. The real person who may be in a very similar situation to the last major victim of cursed spirit manipulation that's confirmed within the narrative is Sukuna. Sukuna is ultimately the biggest obstacle. Sukuna is such a big obstacle, not just in narrative, but it's to the point where on a meta-narrative level, outside the narrative, people are convinced that Sukuna is the final villain. And that's a big reason why they think he has to win this fight. But what I see, considering I believe Kenny's the final villain as the person who set up the entire series, what I see is Gojo beats Sukuna. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, it's a hard-fought fight to the very end, but Gojo, he lost the sixth eye. He's crumbling down. Bro's limbless, worming his way over to Sukuna to spit a red in his mouth. And then Kenny walks up and goes, Sukuna, would you like me to save you? In a very similar vein to what happened at the end of Shibuya, where Mahito was left crawling away like a dog from the beast known as Itadori Yuji. And you could have a similar scenario here. Kenjaku pulls up. Sukuna, disgusted with Kenjaku's presence, uses the last of his strength to lunge at him. And Kenjaku, considering he's completely fresh, well, not completely fresh, once again, he's slaying a whole bunch of culling games people. And if he used domain, he's likely a little bit tired, but we've seen Kenny can use domain on people and be just fine afterwards. Like, he has a lot of cursed energy. But he pulls up on Sukuna and says, you're the last piece I needed. And then, boom, slurps Sukuna up. Scrumdiddlyumptious, just like that. And then, you could argue that that breaks the culling games. Because now, it cannot end, but it cannot continue, because the win condition is null and void. If Sukuna gets slurped, you could argue maybe Megumi's still alive? Maybe, and maybe the culling games would recognize it as that. But then Sukuna is now a tool to Kenjaku. Not in the meta-narrative sense, and to the point where Kenjaku simply views Sukuna as a tool, as he's mentioned on a couple of different occasions. No. Sukuna is just fully now a tool for Kenjaku. And with the culling games conditions, rules, and terms broken, shattered by this unexpected and in every other scenario impossible problem that takes place, the culling games breaks. The barriers shatter. And now Kenjaku has the perfect vessel to imbue all that cursed energy into. And then Kenjaku stands above them all. As Gojo, burnt out, down to the last dregs of his energy, finally nearly beaten, needs to be backed up by the gang, who have been waiting for their chance to get active against Kenjaku this entire time. Now, the only thing is, that's a lot of assumptions. That's the big issues here. That's a lot of assumptions. Assumption number one, that Gojo wins. Personally, I want that assumption, but that's just me. I know a lot of people aren't. So the Sukuna sloppers out there may not like that. Number two, it also assumes that the culling games would break, simply because that rule is now an impossible scenario to fit. That's based on how that even works. Because Kurushi was released from cursed spirit manipulation, and that's how Kurushi managed to become his own player, and not simply a subject of Kenjaku. But like, how does it work if Kenjaku slurps up Sukuna? And the reason I say Kenjaku should be able to slurp up Sukuna is, once again, Sukuna is very similar to Tengen. Or Tengen is very similar to Sukuna. As Kenjaku notes, at the end of the Yuki and Choso fight, Kenjaku literally says, "Wait, look at that. You're trying to emulate him, aren't you?" And we specifically get the comparison of original body Sukuna and Tengen, both four-eyed creatures that evolved from humans. And sure, Megumi is in fact mostly human. Sukuna hasn't restored his original face, but simply the four eyes and the type of cursed energy that Sukuna has should be enough to count as a mutation. If Tengen, who is literally a human, incarnated and evolved. So I think it's possible. That's just a hard thing. What happens when a culling game rule breaks? We know you can break the rules of the culling game by forcefully shutting it down. So once again, even if you think that the culling game would still run properly, even if that weird nebulous condition is met and the Kogane can't figure out how that works, all Kenjaku has to say is, now that he has Sukuna, now that Gojo's not necessarily a threat because he's still brain damaged, he's super out of energy, and Kenjaku can simply run away, all he needs to be is like, hey, Kogane, end the culling games right now, or I will end the culling games right now. And then the Kogane is like, oh, you already broke the rules, but I can't let you break the rules again. Oh, we're going to end it. And then boom, it's ended. We get big final curse spirit fight. And this is where I think another thematic thing would come in, with Gojo needing to be supported by the rest against this massive, crazy curse conglomerate. Only thing is, though, Megumi's cooked in this scenario. Like, I have no way to save Megumi. I have no way to save Megumi. That's the only thing about the scenario, and that feels weird. But at the same time, remember, I believe Gege said that either all the trio's gonna go or only one of them's gonna live. If Nobaru's already cooked, considering she hasn't been mentioned, or at least mentioned to be alive, and a lot of people already believe she's cooked, and Megumi gets cooked, Itadori's the only one alive. Win condition met. Gege's win condition met. Doesn't contradict what Gege said. I mean, Gojo would still be alive. But maybe he isn't. Maybe it could be a double KO. Maybe I'll be real. That's kind of the darker case scenario that I see, is Gojo and Sukuna literally repeat history. What did Gojo say about a 10 shadows user versus a limitless and 6 user in the past? They both offed each other. Admittedly, that was through Maharaga, which is obviously not going to happen here. But still, could be entirely possible if they just repeat history. But I do think it's important to note that Kenny is, and will be cooking until this fight is over. I can definitely see him coming in and breaking the rules or bending them in some unique way, shape, or form. Gojo vs. Sukuna, as it's been so far, is a constant display of rule breaking, rule changing, rule shattering, shifting the perspective on how Jujutsu and its basic properties function. That's what the entire culling game has been up to this point, and realistically, it's especially what Gojo vs. Sukuna has been. So Kenny, the real final villain, coming in and breaking down the entire game, breaking down the entire narrative, and shattering everything we thought we knew, only seems fair, only seems appropriate, because you have to remember, Kenny is there, Kenny is watching, and Kenny is cooking. However, that's what I think. That's what I think Kenny's possibly cooking up. I don't necessarily see anything else that he could likely be cooking, unless he's like, I don't know. I think he is either going to third party at the very end once both are super duper fatigued, or he's making vengeful curse spirits to get ready to fight JJK High, and or both. So that's what I think. Please, what you guys think in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and make sure the notification bell so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below where you can support for as low as $1 a month to get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. Also, now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Now, thank you guys so much for watching once again. Thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dagger the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members, Recliner Plays and Red Bull 4765. I'd like to give a very big thank you to our $5 patrons, Sean Gray, Red Bull 4765, Midnight Gemlord, Kevin, Demix LND, and Art Goon. I'd like to give another super big thank you to our $10 patrons, Robbie Uchiha, Joaquin, and Idemokami. And a final very big thank you to our $25 member, Alex Ice Rose.